Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Debbie Atek. I'm a shareholder of the Bering Straits Native Corporation and an institutional relationship manager at Skyview Investments. This is the first of a series of interviews that I'm doing to explore the economic opportunity and challenges for Alaska Native corporations. If you are not familiar with them, the Alaska Native Village Corporation Association provides invaluable information on state and federal legislative issues and offers support and guidance on business development. Some of the current issues include protecting 8A status for ANCs, securing federal commitment to clean up contaminated lands, which have been transferred to ANCs, as well as revenue sharing. Nathan McCowan, who is Tlingit and I believe Unangan,
yes,
is the president and CEO of St. George Tannak Corporation and also the chairman of ANVCA. We're here to talk with Nathan about 7I and 7J revenue sharing specifically. Nathan, you looked ahead and you saw that by 2030, we believe much of NANA Corporation's revenue sharing will significantly decrease as mining at Red Dog moves from Alaska Native-owned lands to state lands. And that will probably be a major financial hit to a lot of small villages. So this is really, this topic in particular is really the motivation for the Norton Sound Economic Summit, which I'm developing, was 2020, now 2021, and this Facebook Live series. So Nathan, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hope everybody's safe and well and taking adequate precautions in this extraordinary environment. I'm the president and CEO. My day job is president and CEO of St. George Tannak Corporation, the village corporation for St. George Island. My grandfather was born on St. George. I'm also a shareholder in Southeast Alaska. My grandmother's Tlingit. So I've worked at the regional corporation level, who are 7I payers, and I've also worked at the village corporation level, who are 7I receivers. I appreciate being here to talk about this important topic when you think about the long-term trends in the Alaska Native corporation community.
Well, I'm really glad that you have that point of view, as you mentioned that you have been on the 7I payor and on the 7J recipient end. And this is some nuances that I've learned in, I'd say, since 2012, I've really been working on focusing on returning to Alaska and becoming educated on the issues that are affecting our economic well-being. And so this is an area where I definitely can still use a lot of educating. So what drove you, or what is driving this forecast that we are expecting a big decrease? And can you talk about what you think the magnitude of the decrease is going to be for that NANA 7I 7J revenue sharing?
Sure. So looking at where 7I is coming from today will help us think about and talk about where 7I 7J are going. Right now, we've been experiencing the last 15 years a historic upward trend in total 7I 7J payouts, driven really by two of the regional corporations, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation with their oil revenues, and NANA Corporation with the Red Dog Mine and the zinc, primarily zinc revenues flowing from there.
And if I can just interrupt for 1 second, I have to tell you that when I think about revenue sharing right now, the big headline in media is really all around ANWR. But I think more realistically, what we really need to be talking about amongst ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I'm including people who are connected to smaller communities where we have some smaller Native corporations where this topic is more pressing.
Right. The history of 7I, 7J really, starts with timber. Actually, you go back to the beginning. The majority of from say 1980 to 2000, nearly all of the revenue that was shared was timber and a little bit of oil and gas, and the bulk of that timber was coming out of Southeast with Sea Alaska Corporation. And then in the aughts, the 2000 to 2010 timeframe, you see ASRC's oil production come online, and you see NANA, which had started Red Dog in the early 90s, get to a point where they became a 7I payor. And so simultaneous to Alaska's decline in timber, these two corporations come in, and you see a complete takeoff, many multiples of total 7I, 7J coming out. Where we're at today in 2020 is ASRC's first field, the Alpine field, has been slowly declining over the last 10 years. They are right now coming online with 2 more fields, but we don't know yet how much of the replacement of their 7J those fields are going to be. So much depends on commodity pricing, the price of oil,
right.
Prices, and the commodity prices simultaneous to this has been a 20-year bull market as well. So we have volumes going up, prices going up, and consequently lots of 7I, 7J flowing. Looking forward, we've got more uncertainty around pricing, but even more concerning, more uncertainty about the total volumes coming out of ASRC's oil production, and even more so than that, we have a dead stop that's in foreseeable future coming out of Red Dog. Red Dog originally was set up to be a 20-year pit. The first pit went from 1992, 93-ish to about 2012, 2013. They've moved on to the second pit, and they've been public about disclosing that they're looking at the end of this decade basically running out. And it's going to be the 7I totals within a range, and then 1 year is just going to be boom. And so you asked for the magnitude. If you take the average of where we've been the last 10 years and assume that we're going to be within a range of that over the next 8-9 years, we could see a number as low as 50% drop, maybe as high as 80 to 90% in 1 year. So it'll be.
They're not coming back.
You have to wait for other projects.
Right.
The Donlin project in the Chilista region is just a gold mine. The soonest that it would come online would be 2035, 2036, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be really producing 7I shareable resources. Alaska and Southeast has restarted their timber production, but they're not doing the volumes that they did historically through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So unless there's another significant find, Doyon's exploring all over the place in the interior for oil and gas. Otna's made some explorations. There's nothing that's in the hopper right now that's probable and likely to be able to come online to replace the dramatic drop that's going to come from the Nana Red Dog runoff.
It's such a stark realization, but I think it's really important that we talk about it so that people who are affected by it can make plans. So right now, to your knowledge, are there any of the smaller village native corporations that have really used their 7J funding to develop businesses away from either Alaska or even just away from, like if they're rural, most of them are they doing business development in some of the urban hubs in Alaska? Is this something that people are starting to do, like look ahead and say, we need to deploy this stream and invest it in a way so that it becomes money making for us in the future?
I mean, it's hard to say if anybody in the moment is changing their philosophy and changing their strategy, but I am taking it as a personal crusade of mine to encourage people to do that.
I really appreciate that. The first time you and I talked about this, my head was like blown. I was just blown away. As I thought, we need to be talking about this.
When people look at the Alaska Native community, they think of it as being very monolithic, where you have the big regional corporations, a few of the big village corporations. They've got these wonderful buildings and they've been very successful. And so because everybody is 7 feet tall, because that group of people is 7 feet tall, everybody must be 7 feet tall. And the reality on the ground, especially at the village corporation level, is something very different. We do have a group of very successful village corporations who are as big, in some cases bigger than the regional corporations. There's another group below that who are doing some significant operations inside Alaska, inside their communities, outside Alaska. And then there's a very large pool, maybe as many as 130, 140 of the village corporations out of 176 that have very small operational footprints, most likely just in their community, and maybe they have a few investments outside of the community, but the bulk, 75% of the Alaska Native community is almost a de minimis operation, and so those are the ones that I'm most concerned about, because the likelihood is strong that many of them are marginally profitable, or even in cases unprofitable, if you withdrew 7I, or in their case 7J, from them in a short period of time. Combined with the fact that oftentimes folks have such limited time horizons when they're thinking about these things. They're looking ahead to next year, maybe the year after, but they're not looking 5-6 years out, and they're certainly not looking a decade out.
Right.
And the reality is that we have this boon of 7I, 7J coming in. And so my encouragement to every village corporation right now that's out there is to have a plan. There's each one of you has individual needs. Your shareholder base has individual demands. And so there's not a one-size-fits-all strategy of what you should do or what you shouldn't do, but except for don't have a plan. The one thing I would say is to be thinking over the next 10 years and to be looking at the 7J pipeline not as an inevitable permanent perpetuity that's going to be there forever, but to look at it as a resource that's going to be coming in, and then it's going to have a cutoff date. And so put a plan together about, do you want to save all the money and put it in the bank and let it grow and establish a fund? Do you want to operationalize and use it as an investment in order to get yourselves larger and develop your operations such that you can wean yourselves off of 7J? Do you want to band together and create a deeper pool of capital? Whatever it is you do, have a plan. Don't just think that this is going to go on, the gravy train is going to go on forever, because it's not.
And that's something that I want to go back to the beginning, and I also want to be mindful of your time, because I had tried to make sure that we were going to keep this short enough so that we can save the video and upload it and people have a chance to look at it, but also to give people an idea of what an economic summit in the region, in my region, which is the Norton Sound region, but also I think your team, Hallie Bissett, is working on developing programming to work between rural and urban. And we can talk about some of the topics, like you just mentioned, quite a few of options that people have in front of them. And what I'd like to do, and Hallie has agreed to work on this with me, or vice versa, is that we do some programming on what are some options. Like you just said, you can, you don't have to put it all aside, but make a plan for part of it, or whatever your community is willing to do. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And if people are willing to consider working together, that brings some challenges, but I think the more money that you can put into a project, it's like you can stand up a bigger project and you generate more revenues, right? So yeah. I like the idea in theory. I also understand that some communities might not be comfortable with doing that if there's some trust issues. So we'd have to, I feel like that's the benefit of having a 2-day conference, and to do this in the region so that we can reduce the cost of traveling. You and I have traveled to DC and to other economic, like places where there are economic development conferences, and I feel like we can bring back people from SBA and other AEDC and some other development authorities to talk about options over a course of a couple of days to give people kind of a boot camp. So I'm really glad that you had this time to share what you did so far. You answered questions that I had ready, so I didn't ask you any prepared questions. I guess besides the 7I, 7J issue, is there anything else that you think ANC should be looking at particularly on the horizon?
I mean, I think that it's sort of constant vigilance. The ANCs were born of the public policy process. We are not the artifacts of the rest of the capitalist system. We don't resemble the Googles, the Coca-Colas, because we weren't individuals who pooled their capital together to take advantage of a market opportunity, and because we were born of the public policy process, the public policy process could dramatically affect who we are and what we are. We witnessed this spring with debates and discussions in and around the essential nature of the ANCs as provider of services to the shareholders. The biggest thing I think that people need to be thinking about is the longer term. Now that we've had 50-year run almost of ANVCA, is be thinking about the 50 to 100-year time horizon and beyond. How do we keep these institutions sustainable, productive, profitable, and delivering services to Alaska Native shareholders? We always have to resist the temptation of satisfying the now, and
exactly.
And be thinking about the long term. And that's I think I encourage everybody who is a Village Corporation shareholder to really sit down and get involved. It's easy to think the regionals are doing fine, and so therefore the ANCs are doing fine. The villages really, really need more good people being involved and trying to make them better, because these institutions are meant to last for generations and generations.
Which is actually not, and this is one of the points that it's one of my talking points. My board gets sick of me hearing this, but I say this probably at every board meeting, that in reality, the notion of a corporation was not meant for it to last forever. There's very few corporations that are over 100 years old. Mm-hmm. So, but because of the assets that have been transferred into these corporations, our mission now is for these Alaska Native corporations to last in perpetuity. So they, in my opinion, should be managed with that mindset, which is not the normal mindset for an average corporation in the United States. If something is going badly, look at Toys R Us. They shut down, right? I mean, it was a company that was paying out dividends and was a success.
Yeah, much to my children's chagrin. Yes, that was a disappointing day for them.
So, but that's the thing, is that, the idea is that, well, that business plan isn't working, we shut it down, we stand up something new. Mm-hmm. We can't do that with these corporations because we are not the same.
That's why I like to think of them not as Alaska Native corporations, but as Alaska Native institutions. When you think about an institution implies a permanence that, corporations can be bought, they can be sold, they can be started, they can be shut down. And it there's too much of blending of concepts across the corporation in the rest of the United States versus when you contextualize it in corporation in the Alaska Native world. And so the idea was, when we were started, was for them to really be the stewards and the holders of the land. And I think we have to continuously go back to that idea, but also to be these institutions that created benefits off, into the future forever for the Alaska Native shareholders. And so I think that's the key, that's the core of what an Alaska Native corporation is.
So on that, and maybe we can end with this, one of the people who are attending through Zoom and have sent a message in chat, he said that smaller village corporations will fail without some major help with making plans to prosper. Is there anything going to help start the planning process? And I think today you and I are talking about how we see that this is an issue, that we're trying to bring resources to the village corporations. You and your literal mission for your institution is to do exactly that. So do you want to close on that then?
Sure. I would say that that there are resources out there, that there are good people out there who are willing to help. It always starts with the people. That everybody has talented shareholders. I've yet to meet a single village that didn't have super smart, super talented people. And it's engaging those people that's the real challenge. So getting good people with good minds, who can pick up and who can care passionately is really one of the secret ingredients. Developing plans, Well, that's a lot of conversations, and those conversations could begin with ANVCA. We have an annual conference.
Right.
Sadly, this year because of Corona, we've had to postpone it, but we will be resuscitating it next year. Many of the regional corporations, I give them kudos because they have been hosting region-wide discussions to foster the free flow of ideas and the exchange of ideas. And so if your regional corporation does that, please find a way of participating. AFN is another great location for networking and getting to know people. Alaska is such a small place, such an intimate body politic that just by being around, you'll start getting to know the lay of the land and starting to get to know people.
There's those places that you mentioned have so many great times where you have the opportunity to catch people in the break areas. So if you go to AFN, and a lot of AFN has been talking about social issues and community issues,
right,
which are very pressing, but you can grab people and to look ahead to see, AFN is coming up, and if there's somebody that's in the program that you want to meet, send them an email and set up time to say, can I talk to you? I've done that with you and with Haven Harris. Can we get together for coffee? And we met across the street at Kaladi Brothers, and I asked you guys questions for 15 minutes.
Yeah, some of the best, the most productive moments of AFN are actually spent going up or down escalators.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how many times I've run down the escalator and then run back up to catch up with someone I saw across the campus. Well, this has been really wonderful. I really am so glad that you were willing to take the time to do this today. Like I said the first time you mentioned it as a topic that you were concerned about, I just picked it up and I thought, we got to do this. We got to do something about this in our region. And that's when I started talking about building a summit. And because of COVID, we're doing a virtual, series of conversations with people. And you've been just really wonderful to talk to today. And like I said, I'll be posting this video, so it'll be hosted if people missed it. And ANVCA is welcome to repost it anywhere you like.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate you doing the work to better your region. And just to recap real quick that it's not too late. Start now. Have a plan.
Exactly, it is not too late.
Build a plan. There's plenty of time, but have a plan.
Right, absolutely. The time really is right now. And honestly, since we are using Zoom so much, there are so many people who are migrating to virtual meetings, and it's actually made a lot of programming more accessible that was going to be in-person meetings. So I think this is actually kind of a benefit of COVID is you can jump onto a meeting real quick with people that are in a different part of the state or in another part of the country. So, take advantage of all of that. I want to promote the website for the summit that we're building, which is nortonsound.com, where we're going to be, we just launched the website, but we'll be populating that with sites for resources. But I think your website is what?
ANVCA.biz is the Village Corporation Association. So,
and you have resources there. You guys are offering virtual training, which Hallie has been successfully. She was doing that pre-COVID. So you guys are pros.
She's extraordinary, and so I encourage everyone from the Village Corporation community, hop on, chat with Hallie, and get engaged that way. She's a treasure trove of information.
Yep. Well, thanks, Nathan. Great. I'm going to sign off now. Have a great day.
You too. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. All right.